So I'm not sure the exact number of times I've either talked about Bryce Eldridge or written about Bryce Eldridge over the course of the last 10 or so months, but it feels like every single time that I've talked about the Giants' top prospect, I've made sure to mention in some capacity that he likely just wasn't going to be here this year, and that was for good reason. Going back to the winter meetings again, that kind of just feels like forever ago. When Buster Posey was asked about Bryce Eldridge's possibility of coming to the majors, Posey threw cold water on it. In spring training, it was kind of the same thing, where it was likely that Eldridge wasn't going to make it to the majors at some point this year. And I think it was even like a month ago, some point in August, I want to say, Posey went on the radio, talked about the possibility of Eldridge making it to the majors this year. And Posey made the point, or he kind of pointed out, that with Eldridge dealing with the hamstring issue and kind of in conjunction with the left wrist issue that he was dealing with. Posey didn't make that point about the left wrist issue, but this is just to illustrate how much time that Eldridge has missed this year. The Giants had mapped out in their theoretical world that Eldridge was probably going to spend the majority, not even the majority, spend all of this season in the minor leagues, just get a full season of minor league baseball under his belt, and then go in next season as the Giants' either designated hitter, first baseman, or some combination of both. And I think it's important to bring all of that context to the table because it helps illustrate how unlikely this specific scenario was. This scenario, of course, being the fact that Bryce Eldridge made his major league debut today. As we reported yesterday, Bryce Eldridge was indeed being called up to the major league club. Yes, we reported yesterday that he was going to be here today, and as a matter of fact, he was here today, wearing the number 78, being in the Giants clubhouse, and we had an opportunity to talk to him. He played in his first game. Giants lose 8-1, drop their third straight game. But let's kind of move backwards a little bit. So let's address the central question of why is Bryce Eldridge here? Given how many times Posey had downplayed the possibility of Bryce Eldridge being in the majors this year, why is Eldridge here? And it's a pretty simple explanation in that Dom Smith injured himself a couple days ago. It was when Justin Verlander was on the mound on Friday, of course, that being the day when Patrick Bailey hits the big walk-off grand slam, working in conjunction, not in conjunction, but coming a couple months after he had the walk-off inside the park homer, becomes, I think, one of 4 players in Major League history to do both in the same season, yada, yada, yada. That's not necessary context for what we're talking about. But it was during that game, I want to say it was the 5th inning. The Giants were leading 1-0. The Dodgers' Andy Pajes hits one at the 6th hole. Matt Chapman makes a diving stop, fires to first, and Dom Smith lunges to make the catch to record the out, because with 2 outs in the inning, if they record the out, they maintain what was a 1-0 lead. And in lunging, in stretching, Smith just goes a bit too far with his extension, ends up inadvertently hitting the splits. They called it a right thigh injury at the moment, but it has been changed, or it was changed the next day to a right hamstring injury. And hamstrings are historically very finicky. They're not exactly something that you can rush back from. And considering at the time of the injury, I can't remember the exact number of games, but I want to say it was 16 games that were left when the Giants made the move to put Smith on the IL, and they called up Gerard Encarnacion in a corresponding move. Given you can kind of map it out, it was very unlikely that Smith was going to be back with the Major League club at some point this season. And it would have been very feasible for Gerard to be the only real corresponding move in regards to Smith going on the injured list. Following Sunday's loss to the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Giants ultimately made the decision to call Eldridge up to the Major League level. Now, as far as what his specific role is going to be, Eldridge made it very clear, as did Posey, as did manager Bob Melvin, that Eldridge is going to be, as of right now, kind of confined to being the team's DH against right-handed pitchers. So today we saw him go against Zach Gallen, and we'll get to that in a moment. He's probably not going to be in the lineup tomorrow because the Giants face Eduardo Rodriguez, who was a lefty, but then the Diamondbacks' Brandon Pfaadt will be on the mound on Wednesday, and then trying to look, or kind of projecting the upcoming series they have against the Dodgers. It's very likely they're going to face Shohei Ohtani. It's very likely they're going to face Yoshinobu Yamamoto again. It's very likely, well, not very likely, but it is plausible that they face Tyler Glasnow again. And then probably Snell, maybe Kershaw. I think that it's kind of a coin flip between whether they see Kershaw or Glass now. But I think it's safe to say that during that series in LA, they're going to face at least 2 right-handed pitchers. So overall, on this road trip, it's probably going to amount to maybe 4, maybe 5 starts in that DH spot. We're probably not going to see him in first base, at least in any type of meaningful capacity. Maybe we see him as a late-game defensive replacement, or maybe if there's something that calls upon it. But given the fact that Eldridge is still learning the nuances of this position, we've talked about the fact that he picked up the position last year after playing right field in 2023, after he was drafted, and they abandoned the two-way plan, but very much a work in progress for Eldridge over at first base. He expressed his belief that he can be an above-average first baseman defensively. Posey and Melvin have had some positive reports as well, but until we actually see him play the field over a meaningful sample, it's going to be difficult to determine whether or not he can kind of hold his own defensively at the major league level, and kind of, again, projecting way forward, not in the scope of the season, but it will be very interesting to see what the Giants do at the first base position, given the fact that Rafael Devers has, in his own sense, kind of held his own at the position, made a couple nifty plays today. Of course, this isn't to say that the Giants maybe go with a split. This isn't to say that maybe they lean having Devers at the DH ultimately and have Eldridge playing first base. This is all stuff that is going to get handled later at some point in time. But from the vantage point of you're bringing up a 20-year-old rookie in the middle of a stretch drive, it does make sense why they would want to limit the scope of his responsibilities as much as possible while still giving him an opportunity to be a meaningful player at this level, which kind of leads into the other point that I just mentioned right there. Going into today, the Giants had 13 games remaining. They were a game and a half back of the New York Mets for that third and final wild card spot. With today's loss, they have 12 games remaining. They're now 2 games back of the Mets for that third and final wildcard spot. And again, when you consider the tiebreaker, it's technically 3 games back with 12 to go. I want to say that puts them at roughly 9% odds by Fangraphs by the time that I checked it last. But that was one of the questions that Eldridge himself was asked. That was one of the questions that Posey was asked. And I don't have the exact quote immediately accessible right now. My laptop is right down there. But when Posey was asked about it, he said that, Eldridge kind of struck him as someone where he wouldn't really be bothered by something like this. He would be willing to embrace it, effectively saying that he didn't think that the lights were going to be too bright for Eldridge, so to say. And as I mentioned, this is very meaningful baseball that the Giants are playing right now. 12 games remaining, 2 games back. They're not going to have to win out necessarily, but if the Mets can, over the course of these next 2 weeks, just manage to play 500 baseball, not excellent baseball, just 500 baseball, the Giants are going to need to play something close to like 750 baseball. And if that's going to happen, then Eldridge is going to have to be a meaningful contributor in the lineup. Dominic Smith wasn't exactly this overpowering offensive powerhouse, so to say, but he was someone who, I want to say, he had a 750 OPS. I want to say that amounted to like a 111 OPS plus, provided obviously on the defensive end. He was definitely their best defender on first base. I know the metrics don't exactly paint a glowing review of what he was able to do, but when you consider the options that they have right now, that being Flores, Devers, and Eldridge, Smith was definitely the best of that group there. So this is a situation where, Eldridge isn't going to be here to just kind of get his cup of coffee, enjoy his time over at the major league level. This is going to be a situation where the Giants actually need him to contribute in some meaningful way, shape, or form, and that was evidenced by the fact that tonight he was hitting 5th in the lineup against Zach Gallen, a very good right-handed pitcher rather, someone that's earned an all-star appearance, someone that has like a 3.6 ERA over the course of his career. So getting into the game itself, obviously the thing to watch in this game was Eldridge's at-bats tonight, and it was going to be interesting to see how he acquiesced to the major league level, especially against a pitcher of Gallen's stature. And overall in the night, he goes 0 for 3, but it wasn't exactly one of those 0 for 3s, not to look too deep into just 3 at-bats, but it wasn't one of those 0 for 3s where Eldridge, as a 20-year-old, just looked completely and utterly overpowered at the plate. He actually held his own pretty well, again, despite the fact that he went 0 for 3 with a strikeout. In his first at-bat, grounds out, second at-bat, strikes out. In his third at-bat against, I'm forgetting the name of the Diamondbacks pitcher, but the Diamondbacks reliever that they had in the game at this point in time, with a 1-1 count, tried to sneak like an 88-mile-an-hour fastball by Eldridge, down and in. Eldridge inside outs it to left center field, 407 off the bat, 105.9 off the bat. It's one of those ones where if we're playing in 23 other ballparks, it's a homer, and that includes Oracle Park. But unfortunately for Eldridge, he was playing at one of these 7 ballparks tonight where this would not have been a homer, but it was an impressive kind of just miniature display of some of the raw power that he has, some of the raw power that's made him one of the best prospects in baseball. Now, going to those at-bats that Eldridge had against Gallen, it was very apparent very quickly that Gallen was going to try to attack Eldridge with changeups. He was going to try to get him to chase out of the zone. That, of course, kind of being one of the main concerns in Eldridge's offensive profile, the high strikeout rates, the high whiff rates. And I want to say it was like 12 pitches that Eldridge saw from Gallen. He only swung through 2, but he was able to spit on a lot of those kind of changeups down in the zone. I think there was even a knuckle curve that was down in the zone as well. Wasn't kind of flailing all over the place. Ultimately didn't turn that good understanding of what he was trying to do at the plate into results. But again, if we're digging super into the micro, just kind of looking at these 3 at-bats and only these 3 at-bats, to borrow some words from manager Bob Melvin, Eldridge definitely looked a bit hitterish at the plate. And you couldn't exactly say the same thing about the majority of the Giants lineup today. Casey Schmidt accounted for the Giants' only 2 hits today, that being a solo homer in the 3rd inning, his 11th homer of the season. I believe a single as well. The rest of the Giants hitters didn't muster a single hit. And the real difference in today's game was in the bottom of the 6th inning. Kai Wei Tang pitched 4 very serviceable innings, allows 1 run. It came on, it's an unearned run, but it was one of those unearned runs where it was the direct result of a pickoff by the pitcher. I'm not exactly partial to that being the ruling. I think if you're the pitcher and you make the error, you should probably get charged for it. Anyways, but allows the 1 earned run to over 4 innings. But in the bottom of the 6th, the Diamondbacks put up a 6 spot against the Giants bullpen. The Giants bullpen ultimately allows 7 runs overall today. And over the course of this 3-game losing streak, it's been a really rough stretch for the Giants bullpen. Again, this is a bullpen without Randy Rodriguez, without Tyler Rogers and Camilo Duvall, both of whom got traded. Eric Miller is still on the mend. A bullpen just without the core guys that they started the season with. Over the course of this last 3 games, that unit has pitched a combined 14 innings. They've allowed 19 earned runs, and that's especially noteworthy because even when Rodriguez went down in late August, this bullpen was still able to salvage together good innings. I believe when you look at that time gap from the time that Rodriguez went down to through Friday, the Friday being the game, the walk-off game against the Dodgers, I think the Giants had like a sub-3 ERA bullpen, or bullpen, ERA bullpen, yeah, whatever, sure. Can you tell that I flew into the Phoenix on this night? But these last 3 games have not been great from a performance perspective. And tomorrow the Giants are going to likely have some version, some variant of a bullpen game with Tristan Beck starting. We'll kind of see what that looks like tomorrow as the Giants try to avoid losing 4 straight.